And welcome to episode 8 of Creature Comforts, a spinoff series of the Straight Chilling Podcast. This is a show where we love to explore the fringes of horror and all things horror adjacent. I am your host, Soju, and today we are talking about the 2013 film Enemy from director Denis Villeneuve. No, Denis Villeneuve? Denis Villeneuve, the French Canadian director who I am going to butcher their name throughout this whole show. But this is a director who I have come to really highly respect. He has a catalog which I feel has a lot of films that have a lot of dark elements. Of the films that I've seen from him, this might be the one that's closest to horror as far as the type of imagery that's used. But I haven't seen his entire catalog. So, of the films I've seen, I think this is the closest. This is a shot from the film, as you can see behind me, horrific. And there's a lot of stuff like that in this film. And so, yeah, I was introduced to this film, not really knowing much about it, but definitely seeing a lot of the horror elements in it. This director is maybe more well known for some of his more recent films, such as Dune and the newest Blade Runner, Sicario as well. So, yeah, one of those directors who's always kind of on the fringes of horror. He's definitely got a lot of dark imagery and stuff like that going on in a lot of his films. But before I get too far into the analysis, let's go ahead and meet our guest for this week. All right. And I'd like to welcome my guest for today, Seth, who is one of the hosts of the Beandubbed Podcast. Welcome, Seth. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I'm
Yeah.
really glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Seth, at first, I do have to give a shouts out. I want to talk about your podcast in just a second, but shouts outs for the Straight Chillin' 400th episode. You called in, you left a message. It's
Yeah.
hilarious. It was amazing. So, thank you for that. That was perfect. Really appreciate that. But yeah, so Seth,
Mhm.
can you tell us a little bit about your podcast? You guys, you have two other hosts, and you guys kind of focus on like a director or specific actor or something in general, and
Yeah.
cover films from their catalog, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, our initial idea was to have a monthly review of, or just discussion of an actor, director, or writer's filmography. So just like 3 or 4 movies, however many weeks fit into a month.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it just started getting a little bit more inconsistent. It's still, we're still putting out episodes. It's just a lot going on in life. So,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
yeah. So, but Laura and Bruce, Laura, my girlfriend, Bruce, my roommate, they're both gonna stay on. They're both great, and I couldn't say anything bad about either one of them.
Yeah, you guys have a great chemistry. I think that works really well since like it's
Thank you.
very clear that you guys are all friends and tight and
Well,
everything. And you are the last ones uploaded were about my boy Shyamalan, who y'all are going
yeah,
through some of his. But to be fair, you picked one of the best ones, covering Signs, and the new one, Knock at the Cabin. So not too bad.
yeah. There should be a new one up pretty soon. At least by the time this episode comes out, we should have The Visit out.
Oh, okay. Cool. Nice. Oh, I'm curious about that one. Yeah, because that's that kind of like one of those in between Shyamalans where people are
Right.
like, is it great? Is it not?
Yeah.
And so a lot of the times you guys do, you kind of get the goods where like you did Jordan Peele. And so you got to go through
Hmm.
all his movies, and like Alex Garland, and go through all
Hmm.
his movies. But I will say one of the ones that cracked me up, I remember listening, I guess it was maybe last autumn-ish, where you guys did a Miles Teller breakdown, so it wasn't a
Yeah.
director. So you get Whiplash, that's solid, but you guys are troopers and did fucking Fantastic Four.
Yeah. It's
Whoa,
one of the
man.
worst movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's rough. It's terrible. But you guys covered it. I will say though that the sequence, there's like one kind of good sequence in that film of what's his name going through the hallways and just kind of like
Y-
exploding people's heads.
Yeah. It's Doctor Doom or something? Yeah,
Yeah,
there was
yeah,
like a
Dr.
real
Doom, yeah.
horror sequence in the middle of
Yeah.
the movie. Just made no sense. But apparently that's what the director wanted to do from the start. But you know, development and production got involved, and
Sure. Yeah. So shouts outs to you guys for going,
thank
not
you.
just, not just going through all the top tier stuff, y'all are getting in the dirt sometimes.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Cool, cool. All right. Well, actually, so Seth, another thing too. So
Mm,
talking about the movie today. So today we're going to cover Enemy from 2013.
uh-huh.
Enemy is a psychological thriller film written and directed by, okay, here we go.
Uh-huh.
Denis
Yep.
Villeneuve. Yeah. It
Thank-
stars Jake Gyllenhaal, Sarah Godin, and you recommended this to me. I had never seen
mm,
this before. This was not on my list, and I'm really glad that you did, because I've been going through a lot of this director's work recently, and so it was a good another like checkbox for me. But to kind
mm.
of kick things off, what does this movie kind of like mean to you? What was like kind of the inspiration for the recommendation, and would you recommend people generally check it out?
I would absolutely recommend people that, I don't know, and not generally, but I would recommend that people check this out. I mean, I recommended it to you, and the same. Uh, I've been checking out Denis Villeneuve, all of his work lately, and he's very impressive. He's most. I think if I could relate him the most to another director that's very popular is David Fincher. I
Yeah,
think
for
a lot
sure.
of his work is a lot like that. They kind of bridge on horror elements. So that's kind of why I suggested it, because you do the just the outskirts of horror, just
Yeah.
and I know you guys have already done a lot of psychological thrillers at this point. I didn't realize how many like of the same themes are just going on in all of your reviews.
Oh no,
But
yeah. I mean, that's kind of like the nature of the beast when you're doing like the horror adjacent stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. But I mean, I would recommend this to most people. I know it's not like the easiest to swallow, and I won't start um spoiling it yet. But you know, one thing I realized on the second watch is that it is A24. So at the time when I
Yeah.
watched it was like 2 years ago, I wasn't that familiar with it. But if you like A24, this is gonna be right up your alley, because you'd be
Yeah.
more used to the strange art house films like Lighthouse or, you know, Under the Silver Lake.
Yeah, and I agree.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's why it kind of appealed to me because I didn't realize it was A24. Like I said, just kind of breaking out into this director a little bit more too, getting deeper in his catalog. Just a couple months ago, I covered Prisoners with G Baby on his
Hmm.
podcast, and I watched Polytechnic recently, which is a pretty brutal film, one of his earlier films about a
Yeah.
school shooting. Have you seen that one?
I haven't gotten around to that one yet. No.
It's
Is that one
brutal. You
foreign
kinda have
language
to,
or?
like, prepare. Yes, because I did mention one of the reasons me and Seth are, like, trying to be really careful with this name is this is a French-Canadian director, and
Right.
so he's very French, and I believe that that is a French language film because it was a
Okay.
school that's, I believe, based in Montreal, somewhere in
Okay.
Canada, where it's based on a real school shooting, so, yeah, he covers a lot of darker themes, like you said, very Fincher-esque, and I agree. I would generally recommend this to people who are looking for something to kind of chew on a little bit. You kind of have to. I believe that this film is kind of made to be ambiguous, and that bothers a lot of people sometimes if they don't know going into it.
Yeah.
It kind of demands, I think, rewatches to kind of get the full scoop of what's going on. And so for some people, that's not very appealing. Also, some people do have trouble with like kind of infidelity type themes that can really bother some
Yeah.
people. So that is kind of a major theme going on in here. But I was pleasantly surprised. Didn't know anything about it. Went into it blind after your recommendation. Have watched it a couple times getting ready for this and really enjoyed it. I would generally recommend people check it out if they don't have problems with those other things I mentioned.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
Mm.
All right. Well, as you mentioned, Seth, on this show, we like to focus on the kind of horror adjacent films, thrillers, stuff like that, dark things that aren't necessarily considered horror. But to kind of get into some of that discussion, I do have my general coulda, woulda, shoulda questions to kind of bridge that gap a little bit.
Hmm.
So the first question I would ask is, what subgenre of horror could you put this film into if you had to?
Um, for a subgenre of horror, I was going between like psychological or surreal. I think I landed more on surreal because of the imagery in this movie. I mean, right behind you, you can see like the giant spider over
Yeah.
Toronto.
Yeah.
So, uh, yeah, it's very like Lynchian. Um, it's not as Lynchian as Lynch, but I would say that it's surreal in most aspects, as it's just all over the place, and you know.
hmm Yeah, I absolutely agree. That's the one I picked as well.
Mhm.
Surreal horror. And I, like you, I was kind of dancing between surreal and psychological. And I think both would work for this type of question. But just like a kind of more textbook definition of like what kind of constitutes surreal horror. It's
Mhm.
the movie incorporates elements of surreal horror, presenting a distorted and dreamlike atmosphere. It features unsettling and symbolic imagery, ambiguous narratives, and a sense of unease throughout. The surreal elements contribute to the disorienting and nightmarish quality of the film. And yeah, we've got a couple dream sequences in this that kind of add to that. Like you said, there's a lot of really ambiguous spider imagery throughout this film that ties into the narrative and is always kind of accompanied by some really dark music. We'll talk about like kind of the soundtrack and stuff later. And
Yeah.
I think in that way, that surreal nature adds to the unease or disturbingness or like you're not really sure what's coming next. And so I absolutely agree. I landed on surreal horror as well. Awesome. All right. So for the next question is, what one element would you change in this film to make it more of a horror film?
Um, I I think I would just make it more of like a spiral into madness. Like I would make the insanity of the duality more severe. Because it's already a pretty dark movie. There's not really any levity at any point. Um, but I think I would just, you know, use something that would frighten more normal audiences.
hmm Yeah, so
I
like
don't.
making Gyllenhaal. So from the point of like Gyllenhaal's character of like kind of spiraling more into his madness and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
hmm
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that's a good call because yeah, we do have, even because I think this is definitely a character study in a way. And if you were to look at films like American Psycho or something, for
mm,
instance, I think that's kind of, or even like going off of Lynch, something like Eraserhead, where yeah, it just like
yeah.
spirals out of control. Yeah, I definitely see that. So I was kind of thinking more of Cronenberg, and maybe it's because of
Okay.
like the spiders and stuff. So I
Mm,
said, we do get some elements where we have spiders kind of fused with people. And I said, if you could introduce some sort of body horror elements to this film that
mm,
utilizes that spider imagery more, and especially in some of, because there's this one scene later, I guess it's kind of spoiler, but like there's this stripper who's essentially naked, but she has a spider head. And that we do have several sex scenes throughout this film. And I thought like, oh, how terrible would it be if like during these sex scenes, you had this like body horror with the spiders involved more. I was like, that would be really fucked up. So that's kind of where my head was headed at.
yeah, yeah, that's very Cronenberg.
Yeah. Yeah. It also kind of reminded me, I think my inspiration too was Requiem for a Dream. Have you ever seen that
Oof.
film?
Yeah, yeah.
There's a scene in Requiem for a Dream where there's a bunch of different scenes interspliced together, and one of them is like kind of sexual, even though it's still kind of like in a horrific way, but it like doesn't
Mhm.
give you enough time to make it sexual because it splices to these other terrible things going on. And so I think I was kind of thinking like that, like, what if we had a sex scene, but then like there were these spiders and the cutting. So yeah, that was kind of where my head was at on that one.
Yeah. That would
Yeah.
make it very horrifying.
Yes, especially if you're fucking scared of spiders. I will say I don't have like a huge fear of spiders. I'm not like crazy about them, but I don't have this like irrational fear of them. But the spider imagery in this is definitely, it makes my like skin kind of crawl a little bit. I'm like, oh, that's not chill.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, cool. All right, one more for the questions, and then we'll hop into the main dissection of the film. So, finally, if people like this movie, what horror film should they check out?
Well, I'm gonna try not to spoil anything. But I was trying to pick something that's very closely similar. So one of the ones that I was thinking is Lost Highway.
Okay.
It's a Lynch movie. It's almost exact in you know, storytelling.
Okay.
So it deals with sort of infidelity, same way that this one does. And I can't spoil any more than that.
Yeah.
But Lost Highway, being Lynch, very surreal. Probably harder watch than even this one is.
Okay.
So
Nice.
I would recommend, yeah, Lost Highway is probably one. Either that or maybe Black Swan.
That's good.
Just
Yeah.
the sort of like doppelganger-esque feeling, or maybe Men.
Okay.
Just because I
Yeah.
want to get
Well,
some
yeah,
Scotland in
that's a
there.
good call. Yeah. That's a good call. Well, I'm gonna add that to my list. So I'm gonna take that recommendation because I've actually never seen Lost Highway. So I am going to put that on my list now and I will check that out. So
Awesome.
awesome, perfect. I recommended this one, it was kind of tough. But yeah, I recommended Audition from
Mm,
1999.
mhm,
Which also kind of in the same kind of way where there are themes of kind of like infidelity or being faithful, but there is like a character who like kind of has the spiral of madness as well. And
mhm,
also too, it's not like a straightforward narrative. There's kind of weird pieces of maybe like time jumps or something. You're not really sure what's going on at what time, if it's real or not. And so I thought that kind of fit in with some of the
mm.
storytelling beats of this one.
Absolutely, I agree. And just a great movie in general.
Yeah, yeah, that's a Japanese film. Yeah, if anybody wants to
Mhm.
check that one out, yeah, absolutely recommend. That one's also very brutal. So, we got some good horror recommendations for you in case you're not a particular horror fan. Hopefully, we can get you into the genre a little bit. um, so yeah, okay, cool. Well, thank you for doing the homework for me. I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and hop into the main story, and we're gonna drop a spoiler warning so that we can talk like about all the elements of this film.
Spoiler warning.
I just realized that bump is like 30 seconds long. I don't, for some reason it's 14 seconds even longer than when I just played. I was like, oh, I gotta cut that short.
Oh,
Um okay, so for this one, so Jake Gyllenhaal, he's playing two characters essentially. I had to label them because I was getting confused a little bit. There's
mhm,
one that is the clear husband. They call him Anthony. And then the
mhm,
one who's the teacher, he's Adam. I get Anthony's also a an actor kind of. And so yeah, that's the two. So it's pretty much just Jake Gyllenhaal, and then the Adam has a girlfriend, Anthony has a wife. And that's most the characters in this film. Really, really slim cast on this one. The mother as well too. Adam
mhm,
goes to see his mom in just one scene. She calls him a couple times too, but
mhm,
this starts off with a quote. at the very beginning of the film, and it says, "Chaos is order, yet undeciphered."
Mhm.
What did you think about that and how it ties into this story, Seth?
Uh, well, the quote is actually from the book that the movie's based on, from Jose Saramago, I think. Um, I think it's, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I think that that chaos is just order that's unsolved, basically, just undeciphered. It's, I don't know really how it works with the film, but the quote makes sense.
Yeah, well, it's weird too because Adam, as a teacher, he's a history teacher, and
Right.
toward the beginning, so they dropped that quote, and you don't know anything about this film if it's your first time watching, and then like towards the beginning of that, building off that idea, he is teaching a college course about kind of fascist or whatever.
Yeah.
And he drops another quote that says, "All the great world events happen twice." And then he builds off that. He says, Heigl says, "All the great world events happen twice." And then Marx builds off
Mhm.
that by saying, "The first time it was a tragedy, the second time it was a farce." And I think that like kind of builds off of the chaos is ordered, but also I think that those quotes maybe fit better into this narrative because of the
Definitely.
way the infidelity theme is kind of played out. That's how I took it. Yeah. What
Mhm.
did you think
And
about those quotes?
those definitely fit a lot better. And I think by the end of the movie, I mean, if you caught those quotes while he was doing the lectures, because I mean, it could be easily overlooked,
Yeah.
but it basically just tells how his cycle goes throughout the movie, because even after in the movie, it seems that he's tried to figure it out or solve his problem. Um, and I'm sure we'll get to that, like how he actually does that, but he still kind of falls back into the same cycle by the end of the movie. And it's happened once, and that was a tragedy. Shouldn't have happened, just like the infidelity. I mean, it is the infidelity. And then the second time, it's just going to become a joke, and he's going to have to figure it out, you know.
Well, yeah, and I think the way so I put these two different kind of quotes together because they kind of dance around each other even though they don't seem like directly connected in a way, but it's kind of like the artistic way that the story is told in this film. So definitely the Heigl quotes leads to the infidelity, but the chaos is yet undeciphered. One note I made about this film is I was like, how do the beats of this movie, like the narrative aspects of this, actually play out in a timeline, you know?
Hmm.
Because I think that's one of the deep, like, ambiguous elements of this film because I feel like you could order it in a bunch of different ways to where, like, so I think the idea is Adam and Anthony are actually, the same person. They
Right.
play with this idea of like, "Oh, I have a double who looks exactly like me," and everybody around them play it like that, but that's not, really what's happening. And so by the end of the film, what we have is the husband who's married takes the girlfriend on like a sexy weekend or whatever to have sex with her, while
Mhm.
the teacher comes into the husband's apartment and has sex with his pregnant wife, like this kind of swap. But at the end, the girlfriend finds out that the one Jake Gyllenhaal is married, and she, kind of freaks out about it. And as a
Mhm.
result, they have a car crash, and it's like maybe suggested that she dies as a part of that.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. What did you think about that? Did you think that maybe she died as a result of that crash, or it was more metaphorical, or what did you think?
Well, I think that the entire situation worked out the way that it was actually happening in reality, up
Okay.
until the point where she finds out that he has a mark on his ring finger. I think that's something that I don't know who we're actually following here, if it's Adam or um,
Anthony.
I
Yeah,
Anthony.
and yeah.
Anthony.
There's so
I
many.
don't
I
know
know
if
it's the
it's
same guy.
yeah, Jake.
Jake. Yeah,
We're
my boy
following Jake.
Jake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think at that point, his mind kind of makes up the rest of the situation, them arguing, them getting into the car, them arguing some more, him
Okay.
driving erratically and then crashing the car. And that was his idea in his mind to essentially kill off both of the the bad characters,
I
his
gotcha.
infidelity in general.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, more metaphorical. And I definitely, yeah,
mhm.
and that's the thing about this movie is you could interpret any one scene like a ton of different ways, and there's never gonna be like a clear cut
Yeah.
for it. Yeah. That's interesting because there's some I can't I'm really like even especially in my second watch, I was really trying to make sense of things that I know don't make sense. But I was trying my best because at the beginning too, there's this interesting scene where we have only been introduced to Adam and it's showing
Mhm.
his life, the teacher, his apartment. And at one point, the mom calls and she says, thanks for showing me your apartment, but I don't know how you live that way. Okay. So,
Mhm.
talking about Adam's life, where he essentially lives alone, his girlfriend comes over sometimes, even when she's there, he doesn't really give her his full attention. He's kind of distracted. It's a very minimalist kind of apartment, empty, versus the scene where he actually goes to see his mother. She talks about she says like, "Oh, you have like a very," she's like, "Oh, you have a very lovely wife, you have a lovely apartment." And I was like,
Mhm.
"Okay, it feels like there's some disconnect there." So I was like, "Could you place it in an order of this sequence played out, his wife found out about it and like left him as a result, or that was going on before he kind of decided to stay faithful to his wife and now he's kind of like pulled his life back together, but he's starting to slip into that pattern again." I don't know.
That's really interesting. I actually didn't think about that as like it happens after, um, like that he actually divorced his wife at that point. I didn't even think about that, and she does remark on how he can't even stick to one girl. He
Yeah.
can't even have one girl. So and I because she also said that he loves blueberries, but he doesn't love blueberries, and then the
Yeah.
actor is the one that loves blueberries, but Adam doesn't. Um, so there's a lot of disconnect in all of the dialogue. So
Yeah.
it is hard to figure out maybe the phone calls earlier were made up or because the interaction between his mom and him I think is real.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. I feel like that's our one link to, well, and it's hard too because I feel like every interaction for the most part is real except the ones he has with himself.
Mm.
Um, because he talks to his wife, and there's little hints there too, where one time when the Jakes are calling each other, so Adam Jake, the teacher, is calling his actor Jake house, and he picks up, and but then the wife says something like, "Who's on the phone? And are you seeing her again?"
Mm.
And and he says, "What do you think? It's like a jealous husband?" And so there's hints there that she knows that he has been at least or he has been unfaithful in the past and she knows about it.
Mhm.
So there is a pattern there, and I think that's kind of a reality. Um his teaching seems real, and even at the end his wife says to him like, how was your day at school? Or, how is,
Right.
and
Mhm.
he's like, gets confused because he's trying to pretend he's the actor. And he's like, "Oh, is she onto me?" But she like doesn't give a shit. Like she's, so yeah, this movie's wild. It's really
Yeah.
wild to think about, honestly. Hurts my
Yeah,
brain.
and Denis himself, the director, I'll stop trying to butcher his last name.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He actually said that he was completely intentional by making it uh up for interpretation. You know, everybody has their own uh interpretation of the movie, and I mean, that's completely intentional on his part. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I did read, have you read the book
I
on this
haven't.
movie?
No,
Okay.
I
I
looked
read the
into it.
synopsis. Okay, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had mentioned it before. I just, if anybody is interested in checking, there is a book and it's called The Double. It's from 2002. It's from a Portuguese author named Jose Saramago.
Hmm.
And I did read the kind of plot synopsis, and there's some key differences. There are some key differences, and you can tell that this was written to be inspired by that, but definitely its own kind of unique thing. Where I feel like that, if I remember right, that book focuses more on the aspect of like there is a doppelganger. And that's really weird, right? Like what the fuck? Whereas this one is more of like taking it as a kind of metaphorical device
Hmm.
to kind of tell the story of infidelity. So um, yeah, but it seemed like a really interesting book. I might actually check that out as well. Let's talk about the fucking spiders
Let's do it.
because I think we could go around and around and around about like the timeline and stuff. But
Yeah, yeah.
what do you think? There's key scenes in here. It's not just like heavy with it. I feel like they're used in specific cases and in like very important moments of the narrative. But it starts and ends with some spider imagery. What did you
Mhm.
take the spider imagery as?
I personally think that it's a representation of his guilt. Um, and you know, his morals, which you should have if you're gonna be having affairs and doing horrible shit. He he's at the first spider you see is at the secret sex club with the spider crushing fetish.
Yeah,
And
so hot.
yeah, that, that really gets my rocks off.
Oh yeah. I love how everyone, so that is the very first scene, I think. The movie opens up and Jake Gyllenhaal, he's taking his buddy. They're going down this like mysterious hallway. He's got his secret key. He goes into this room.
Mm,
There's just a bunch of old crusty men like watching and all as
mm,
these girls like bring out the spider and step on it with these high heels or whatever, this like giant fucking spider tarantula, I guess, or whatever.
yeah.
So yeah, that's like the kind of like setup of the spider, and then it gets weirder and weirder throughout the movie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
where
get
else? Yeah, go ahead.
you get half star for the Yabos in like 2 minutes in this
Oh
movie.
yeah, oh yeah,
I don't know if
definitely
that's
giving
like
half
a
star for the
record.
we have some spider yabos in this movie too.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I should give a bonus half star for those. But yeah. Yeah, the spider imagery. It starts off like kind of practical in a way, even though it's weird. Where it's a literal spider. But then
Hmm.
let's see. There is, I think, if I remember right, the next scene is he's having a dream sequence where he is back in that, but it's upside down. And it shows it
Hmm.
from the perspective of Adam, the teacher, going there, which we're presented as if it is Anthony, the actor, going there because he's
Hmm.
there with the guy who works at the building that Anthony lives in. And they have a little dialogue about that later. But okay, so yeah, the next one is Adam is having this dream sequence. The hallway is upside down and there is a
Hmm.
woman walking towards him and her yabos are out. And then as she gets closer, she's got a fucking spider head, which that scene, I think that well, that one and maybe the ending scene were the like the creepiest spider
Yeah,
elements
yeah,
for me.
yeah,
It's like, oh
yeah.
fuck.
The spider head is really unnerving.
Hmm. Yeah.
Not fun to see. Especially when it's far back and it just looks like a silhouette of a naked woman, and then
Yeah.
the surprise comes. Yeah.
That's a brilliant element too, because it does do that. There's been a couple movies, and it kind of reminded me in a way of maybe like what The Shining does, where it
Mm,
introduces this sexual element to kind of like bring you in. Oh, you got my attention. Oh, there's Java's out, and then it brings the horror. And so that's why I think this movie really does have these deep rooted horror beats to it.
mhm,
And I think that's a good example of one. You're like, oh, what? Oh, no. She's got a spider head. And the effects
mhm,
on it are really good. They don't do a whole lot, but when they do it, it looks good. There's another spider scene where it's giant and walking through the
mhm.
city. I kind of had a harder time with that one about what that was to kind of signify. Did you have any particular ideas about that one?
The I think, um, it could be one of 2 things, I think, because it comes right after the scene where he goes and sees his mother. So
Yeah.
he could be
Okay.
feeling guilt from, not seeing his mother enough, or it could just be a representation of his mother because she seems pretty demanding. She seems pretty overlordish over his entire life. But it could also just be, a representation of his overwhelming guilt just following him because it's over the entire city.
Yeah, it looms over everything. That's another creepy image if you like take it by itself. I like love just the imagery of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like my background right now. And well, also too throughout the movie, they do just do those shots of like we're in the like transition shots where we're like cruising through
Mhm,
the city, everything's normal, and this is the only time where something is not normal, and it's a fucking
mhm.
giant spider. These crazy legs. It makes me think of like Shadow of the Colossus or just like
Oh, yeah.
massive.
Mhm,
Um, yeah, and then the final scene that we get it in is the very ending, which like really puts the exclamation point kind of on this film, which is it seems like, you know, the infidelity is like maybe like it's like the decision to stop the infidelity, like the way he comes back home to his wife, like these two personalities are fusing. His wife is pregnant. He's had a night with
mhm,
her. He didn't go out. She even says like, "Oh, I thought you were going to be out all night," which
mhm,
would kind of maybe like suggest, well, her actual husband is supposed to be having an affair with the girlfriend at the time, but then this Adam is there at the house, and so she's surprised by that. They have a night together, and she says like, "I want you to stay," or whatever. And so it's like, okay, that's the end of the infidelity. The
mhm,
life is changing. But then he gets the key to go back to the club, a new key, and he puts it like in his pocket. And then that's when he goes into the room, and his wife is not a pregnant woman anymore. She is a giant fucking
yeah.
spider cowering in the room. That was nuts to me when I first saw it. Oh my God.
Oh, and it
What did
looks
you think
so good.
about? Yeah, what did you think about that ending?
Uh, well, the first time I saw it's very, very shocking. It comes up completely out of nowhere, and you kind of feel it. Again, the horror beats because she's not answering after he just suggested, he's going to go out that night if they don't have plans, which is exactly what she doesn't want. But she goes completely quiet, stops responding, and he walks back. There's going to be something, but then there's a giant fucking spider that just crawls up into the corner of the room.
Oh my God.
It's horrifying. I think a lot of people have said it's like the most horrifying ending to a movie that they've seen, but
Mhm.
uh,
Especially outside the realms of horror, if you're just taking this like,
right.
"Oh, yeah, this," it's like, "What the fuck?" It's so like, even I think if you're not afraid of spiders, like, the way he plays with the size of it and the
Yeah.
realism of it, it looks like a giant fucking spider. But yeah, you're right. It's literally after, so he puts the key in a scene and he's shouting to the bedroom. Yeah. "Oh, actually, I think I can't go out tonight," or whatever. "I got something going
Hmm.
on." He's going to go to the club, and that's when the transition happens. Yeah, I guess I kind of took the general spider vibe. It's always, well, except for the city scene, it's always kind of tied to something sexual. And that way it's like tied to the idea that he's going back to the club. So I
Hmm.
guess I took it as like the sign of his infidelity or like this I don't know, like the way it would pop up the more the infidelity was kind of like pulling at him, like his need for it or whatever.
Hmm.
And I thought that that was a good twist too, because Adam is always presented as the kind of more humbled, plainer kind of guy, and he's got this wife and kind of like the life that you would think if these characters were really separate that Adam would want, you know. He's moving to the nice apartment, he's moving to the wife who loves him and stuff like that, and then but he makes that change too, and then we get the fucking spider.
Hmm.
So it's just like this cycle of
Right.
infidelity.
And yep, and that's why it goes back to that same lecture he was making earlier, because it's just going to start all over again if he doesn't actually make a change. And he didn't seem that frightened by what he saw, or it's really just a look of displeasure.
Yeah, he gives like this
That he
kind of
just
like,
kind of
huh,
sighs.
look or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that does tie to the idea, like, of the quote, going back to it again, of like the first time it's a tragedy, the second time it's a farce.
Mhm.
So if we take it as if that was his first affair that he had with the woman who looks just like his wife, I thought that was a good choice too. Like
Yeah.
the blonde hair and everything. So he has an affair with this woman who looks just like his wife. It ends either in a literal or metaphorical car crash. And now he is like supposedly like trying to move on with a pregnant wife.
Right.
And um and now he has made the decision to go back to the club to experience that again. And we get that pop up. So yeah. Cool imagery, really fucked up imagery, but also very powerful
Mhm.
imagery. I liked it. It's one of those things that like lives in your mind. Like I will never forget that ending, you know?
Yeah.
So good on old Denis for that one. Let's see, what else? What did you think about the color grading of this movie? It's very distinct.
Um, well, I actually watched a making of uh video on the Blu-ray that I have.
Okay.
Um, it was um it was intentional. It was to make it feel more eerie. I think. I mean, Denis pretty much just said it was intentional. They used filters to make it that way. It wasn't just a weird grading that was a bad decision.
No, yeah.
I think it was entirely intentional. It does kind of make it feel eerie and odd and dreamlike. Same with how like the entire Toronto landscape seems to be like cloudy and like smog, kind of.
Yeah, it looks polluted as shit, and I was thinking to
Yeah,
myself, "Does the city
it's like
really look like that? Because it looks like
I don't.
something in, like, China or something."
Yeah, yeah. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm. Oh, yeah, and
yeah.
I
I think.
think he does color gradings. I mean, I know he has, specific color gradings, especially on things
Mm,
like Dune and, Blade Runner and stuff like that, so,
well, yeah.
he's, like, really good at that. At first, it kind of bothered me, I think the first time I was watching it, but it kind of fits. It kind of fits the kind of dirty nature of what is actually going on.
Mm,
Like you said, it looks like smog. And it's in every scene. So no matter which Jake you're with, it's, you know, permanent, and
mm,
every apartment looks kind of like dingy, and the sky is never blue.
right.
And so, yeah, in that way, it creates that like dreamlike state, but also like this kind of like filthy state, like permanent filth almost. It's really interesting. It's very strong, not particularly pleasant, but effective, I
Right.
think. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's appropriate for what the movie was going for, or what Denis was going for the feel of the movie.
Yeah, yeah, I think it worked well. I'm like respecting him more and more, and that with that Polytechnic movie, so he does have a lot of like color palettes and stuff that are very distinct. And Polytechnic was just completely black and white, and I think it's kind of like
Mm.
like it's so stark and stuff like that. So yeah, he's very intentional with those kind of things. It seems like.
Mm.
Yeah, so let's see. Oh, the music I also thought was like super dark in this. What did you
Mm.
think of the music of this film?
Yeah, I I caught more of like a light, sleepy, like dreamy. It was like almost like woodwinds that were playing. At
Mm,
least at the start of the movie.
hmm.
I didn't pay so much attention when I was getting more pulled in, and by the end of the
Yeah.
movie. But I know there was those quick sound drops on and certain scene changes. But other than that, it seemed like the soundtrack was very light and dreamy, and like clarinets and.
Yeah, that's really good that you mention it because I didn't take as much note of that. But when you said that, there's this one distinct moment because I remember the first time I was watching it, I was really trying to get the tone of this film, and
Mm.
that confused me a little bit because I think it's when he's starting to see the movies that the other Jake is in, where he's like renting
Yeah.
the movies and he sees himself in the, and I was like, this is a weird tone that this music is setting. I'm not really sure where it's going. And it almost is like dreamy and then like a little like boppy a little bit
Mhm. Yeah.
in those kind of moments. But then yeah, maybe it's tied specifically with the spider imagery because I remember the music when the giant spider's walking through the city is like very ominous, and then it
Mm.
does some like
Yeah.
stings a little bit, and I was like, "Ooh, that is like, ooh, it adds to the creep factor significantly." I
Mhm.
think. Yeah, so I don't really know how he uses music in his other films. I haven't really paid attention as much. Do you have any idea?
Well, I think in, several of his movies, he uses a different style. Obviously, you would, but in Prisoners, it was, like, much darker and subtle, except for, like, the really I mean, the action scenes, the violent scenes, and the ones that people really remember. And, I remember Blade Runner having a pretty distinct sound.
That makes
It
sense.
was
Yeah.
very, yeah, synthy and techno,
Yeah.
um, as it should be. I
Yeah.
I I think he picks his soundtrack pretty good for any movie that I don't remember the Sicario soundtrack very well. I just remember loving the movie.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a thing. When I started, like, watching more of his films, I was like, oh, shit, I didn't realize he made this," like, I wasn't, like, on focused on the name, but, yeah, going down the list, I mean, he's kinda there's one too that is highly regarded. I can't it was, like, one of his earlier films that I'm, like, really eager to watch now because apparently it's still, supposed to be one of his best, and, I just, like, wanna go through his whole catalog now. I wanna go back to Blade Runner. It's been a while since I saw it, but I really enjoyed it when I did see it, I think in theaters. So yeah, I need to go back. I do remember Blade Runner being, like, distinct in its music choices though, and, like, but
Mhm.
fitting that tone, like you said, as it should.
Yeah.
I was trying to go through, all my different, like, kinda notes here. There's so much. This
Yeah.
film, I feel like you could talk about this film for forever, honestly, and as I said at the beginning, I think it's built that way, which is it's very smart in a lot of ways because it's a tight 90 minutes. It's not super long. He packs everything in there and kinda, like, works it in well, so, yeah, I've seen it twice now. I wanna watch it again, I think.
Just to catch
Uh,
more and more of it.
yeah, I wonder too, I kinda mentioned this, I know some people have some I remember having a discussion, I think it was last year when Park Chan-wook's latest film came out, Decision to Leave, which was
Mm.
kind of, like, heavily advertised as being a movie kind of about, like, infidelity and cheating and stuff like that, where it, kinda really bothered some people as a theme, and I could, like, totally see that, and I wonder if this movie would even hit harder for maybe somebody who has dealt with that on either end, honestly,
Mm,
about like the kind of cropping up all of it, or somebody who has been cheated on or something, and kind of how that feels. So yeah, I could see this having even a more powerful emotional resonance than just being like, oh, kind of weird, or a
right.
wild story or whatever.
Well,
Yeah,
for someone that was like cheated on, it would put them into the perspective of the person that cheated on them. I don't know if they would necessarily want to do that, but it's an interesting perspective.
yeah,
Um, yeah, it's hard subject matter to deal with because I know people who have been cheated on probably don't want to reflect on that very much.
sure,
So,
yeah. But in that same vein, as you said, putting them in that perspective, I think it handles it in a pretty good way. I would assume, because
mhm,
neither, even though they try to kind of sell Adam Jake, the teacher, as kind of like a more regular person, like not such a piece of shit. Like, it's pretty clear that
right.
the actor Jake is a like, clear piece of shit. But,
Mhm.
Adam is just more like a regular kind of guy, but he's still kind of shitty, you
Yeah, he
know?
is shitty.
Yeah, so
He
even if you had to sell that perspective, at least they're not trying to make it like super sympathetic or anything.
well, even he has like a pretty non-consensual sex scene pretty early on
That's
with his girlfriend.
true.
That's like out of
Mhm.
nowhere.
Yeah, good call, where because she's like at first she's like kinda, they're in his apartment, she's like, "Oh, I'm kinda drunk," and she seems like kinda down, but he's like, "I'm gonna grade some papers, babe," and then he, like, is watching the movie after she goes to sleep, and then goes to have sex with her, like,
Yeah,
while she's sleeping. It's like, "Damn, dude."
yeah. You need to warm up a
Yeah.
little bit more than that.
Yeah. Good call on that, yeah, so
Um,
they're definitely, like, little beats where he's just, like, not a great dude either. Um, so yeah,
yeah.
I think if you are put in that perspective, it's, at least it's not trying to sympathize the culprit.
Mm,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. Was there any other, like, major themes or, like, plot points or anything? I know there's a ton of them that you, wanted to kinda, like, go over, like, chew on a little bit?
Yeah. Got in a list of like bullet points that I'm trying to
Yeah,
mark off
me
as we
too, I'm
go,
going through
but
on my phone too, yeah, like, "Okay, there's a billion notes on here."
yeah.
Yeah.
um I think some interesting things that I noticed was that, I mean, I don't know how significant it is. I think it just puts them together more, but we already know that Adam and Anthony are the same person. But I noticed on the second watch that when Adam and Anthony first meet and they go to the hotel room and he's following that girl that almost kind of looks like the woman with a spider head,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
and he's kind of staring at her, but he like goes past the door he's supposed to go to and
Okay.
then goes back to 221.
Mhm.
And then when Anthony goes there under the door, you can see does the exact same thing and then walks it back.
Good call. Okay. Okay.
Now, I think that's just like an Easter egg of some sort that I noticed. But I also noted that it seems like, I mean, it doesn't seem like, but Anthony is in a pretty loveless relationship with his wife, and and Adam's relationship seems just purely sexual, which just lends more to the fact that she's his mistress. And, you know, I also heard, or I read, someone said at the end of the movie when the spider shows up that the spider could symbolize the wife because the spider has 8 legs, and the wife, or like 8 appendages, the wife being pregnant also has 8. It's an interesting thought. I don't know how
Mm.
much it actually lends to the story itself, but
That is interesting. That is an interesting thought. I didn't think about that.
yeah.
Yeah, because like I was wondering, even though they play, so every spider scene is played as like it's not real except the first one. But even then, if you take the idea of the spider, like being crushed as he's going to the sex club, like it doesn't have to
Mhm.
be literal. Like that would be a really weird sex thing to do. I'm sure maybe someone out there's doing it, but um there's a club for everything, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But that's a cool perspective I never considered. Because the spider at the end obviously is where his wife was. It's cowering in the back and it's like afraid of the actions of the husband.
Mhm.
Well, yeah. So kind of going off the couple thing, like little details that you picked up on. Another one that I picked up on, well, I don't really know what it means. And this one was kind of the one that started questioning the time aspect was when he is Adam, but he goes to the company that Anthony works for to get some information on him.
Right.
He's talking to the guard, and the guard is like, "Oh, I don't think I've seen you for at least 6 months."
6
And then
months,
when
yeah.
he's talking to the wife, he's like, "Oh, how far along are you?" And she's like, 6 months. And I was like, "Oh, that's curious." One, because
Mhm.
I was like, she looks much further along than 6 months to me. I mean, I was like, she's like big old belly, looks like she could
Yeah.
deliver it any day. But I thought that
Mhm.
could be significant of like, oh, 6 months, 6 months, did he kind of give up that life? 6 months ago,
Mhm.
and that's why he's not going to be an actor. His mother even says, I wish you give up that idea of being an actor.
Yeah.
So like he kind of gave up that life. He's been faithful. But he's kind of feeling like you said in that like loveless state, and he's kind of like
Mhm.
starting to fade again.
Right.
Could be, I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
there's a
Well,
lot
that
of
that
little, yeah, Easter eggs like that.
yeah, that interaction actually is one of the hardest ones for me to piece together in the idea of him being uh one person when he talks to his wife on the bench, or what would
Yeah.
be Anthony's wife on the bench, because he walks away and then she immediately calls Anthony, and while he's walking away Anthony picks up the phone. So I don't know how you would necessarily make up an explanation for him answering the phone when he's walking away and not answering a phone.
Yeah, so I would say even, yeah, that specific scene. And honestly, and this is why it's definitely written this way to be so ambiguous, but almost all the interactions that he has with the wife are
Mhm.
misleading, it feels like, in order to fit this narrative. Um, because the girlfriend you can explain away easy. She just doesn't know he's married. He's
Right.
he's cheating. He hides that from
Mhm.
her. She treats him like a regular guy. It's not like a very deep relationship. She shows up at his apartment. They have some dinner. They have some sex. Sometimes she stays over. Most of the time she doesn't.
Right.
And so that's easy. But yeah, the wife even saying like, I talk with somebody on the phone. It sounded just like you. And yeah, going to see him at the school. And then even at the end, they hint at the idea of like she knows it's not her husband, and she's like okay with that because she knows her husband is cheating too. So from the literal
Right.
sense, it like makes narrative sense, but from the metaphorical sense, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those
It's
are
just
those
a
are
movie that
tough.
it just keeps you questioning. It's
Hmm.
and I don't think it's ever going to be like solidly decided. I don't think you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah. I read some trivia that said that everybody had to sign like a non-disclosure type of thing that said they would never discuss the actual meaning of the spiders like in the film or
Oh,
whatever. Like he didn't want them like talking about that or giving that away. So I assume they all sat down, had a conversation about it so they would all know like the motivations and everything. But yeah, they're not like allowed to talk about it or whatever. So it's like, okay. I mean, it's obvious, very clearly meant to be like, so, all thinking about it with no real answers, but it's fun to try.
yeah. We have had a discussion.
Yeah. 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 So you brought up the hotel scene too. I mean, there's definitely hints there where it's just him with himself, and he says something like, I knew this was a bad idea. I
Hmm.
thought was good because he's at the hotel where, presumably maybe that's where he has cheated or he's planning to cheat. And he like kind of, I felt like that was kind of like him struggling with himself again,
Hmm.
where maybe if we go with the idea of like he gave the cheating life up and he's trying to be the good husband, and now this is kind of where he started, the two personalities are starting to clash again,
Hmm.
where obviously the one side of him wants to cheat and he's like meeting himself in the hotel room where you would meet, a mistress or something. He's like, I knew
Hmm.
this was a bad idea, and he bails on it. He's like, no, 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 and he tries to pull it back together, but he just can't get a hold of it. That's yeah, some good stuff in that scene too. Man,
Hmm.
this movie, it was really cool. I was like really excited to watch it, and then even spiraled off into other from this movie. I was like, what are some other movies like Locke? I am not well,
Lock.
like Enemy, and one of the
Uh-huh.
ones that popped up was Locke with Tom Hardy, and I watched that and fucking loved that movie too. So I was like, man, this was a great recommend because it has like kind of dominoed into some other things. Have you seen
I
Locke?
I haven't. Is it like Enemy?
I mean, not really, but I understand where the recommendation came from. Like
Okay.
there is some thread, but do check out Locke. I watched it after watching this for the first time and was like blown away by it. It was so 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 good. But yeah, I would recommend you check out Locke as well.
Mhm.
Not a horror film or anything. It's just Tom Hardy sitting in a car, but it's fantastic. So
Who doesn't want to see that?
yeah, yeah. It really is. Yeah, it's good. But yeah, so yeah, I really dug on this. Okay. Anything else? Anything else you want to go over?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
just had one cool quote that Jake had at like the very start of the making of
Yeah.
thing that he said that I look at certain characters in the movie like punctuation marks. Some people are periods and some people are exclamation marks. Most people in the movie are question marks.
Nice. Yeah. Cool. Cool. Yeah, I liked it. Yeah, it's
Mm.
old Jake Gyllenhaal. He's got some wild. I was like kind of going through his filmography too. I was like, man, he's been in some weird stuff.
Mm.
Good on him. Oh, another crazy thing too, I want to mention, this and Prisoners came out the same year, both with Jake
Did
Gyllenhaal,
it?
both the
Holy
same,
shit.
yeah, same director, both came out with Jake John, both fantastic films, and I was like, wow, what a fire year. um, yeah, it did. I did 2013 or 14, 13, yeah. They both came out, so I think this one was made first, but I think for some reason Prisoners came out first, if I'm remembering that
Mm.
right, or either that or
They,
flip flopped.
yeah, they could
Yeah,
have put this one on the back burner. It's less of a crowd pleaser, I think, than Prisoners is. And I think it has
sure.
a significantly lower budget.
And yeah, it does, and it didn't really make that much money. I think it was like a $13 million budget, and I
Mm.
did see a quote from Denis who said that he treated this as kind of like a warm up film, knowing that he
Mm.
was going to be making Prisoners. That's why I think this one was made first, but released second. So yeah. So either way, both fantastic films. Prisoners
Mhm.
is definitely more grounded though and a clear cut. But
Yes.
yeah, okay. Well, let's go ahead and get into our ratings out of 5. Where would you put Prisoners, Seth?
Uh, why don't I don't really make a habit of reviewing things, especially on my podcast. That's where we're a discussion podcast. It's kind of a joke on
Yeah,
our podcast. Um, I don't know. I tend to rate things higher than they deserve
sure.
sometimes, and if I really don't like something, I just give it a 1
Yeah.
or something.
Ah, that shit's
If
like one.
I I don't
Yeah.
I think I think I'd put this one at a solid 4.
Yeah.
I put it there. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think a 4 out of 5 is probably good.
Cool. Yeah, I was gonna put it at so so I've like, man, I've been doing this for like 9 years now. And so dude, I can't even just watch anything without that popping into my head of like, what would I rate this? It's like in Mario or something. I can't do it. So I naturally just kind of like place things. I was gonna put this one around like a 3.5, thinking it's obviously made with a good craft. The color grading is
Um,
good and purposeful, and the story is very interesting. I think like I do think there's a little cheating going on in order to make it work. It works, but
mm,
like what we were talking about before, the kind of interactions with the wife where she really needs to sell this idea that they are two people, even though they're really
yeah.
not two people. I think that that's the kind of thing where it could be like, well, it's like not cheating, but it feels like confusing.
Mhm.
Because they're not two people. So, and so I was gonna kind of like knock it, I guess, for that. And like it's purposefully being so ambiguous in a lot of different aspects, but it all being crafted very, very well. Of course, as we said before, I gotta give the half star for the Yabos. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna end it at a 4-star, just like you. So really top tier film, good stuff.
All right.
And yeah, awesome, cool. So easy math, average 4 out of 5 for Enemy. Let's hop over and see what people think over at Rotten Tomatoes and play a little game. All right.
Mhm.
Certified fresh to death.
Nope. All right. I'm not as clean cut as Randy is on the bumps. All right, Seth. So we play this on Straight Chilling, but we have to play it a little different here on Creature Comforts because it's just the two of us. So
Mhm.
we are going to hop over to Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm going to compare this to a couple different films, and we are going to try to guess the user scores on this one. So we're not really going to dive into the
Oh.
audience scores. So I have
Mm.
here the Enemy 2013 overall score. And so first, you need to beat the house in order to win this one, Seth. So on this one, which do you think is higher on the overall critic score? Enemy or Nightcrawler? Have you seen Nightcrawler?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, another
Uh,
Jake Gyllenhaal weird dark movie.
I think Nightcrawler's higher.
Okay,
It,
all right. So we're gonna go through all three of them first. We had 3 rounds. So round
mhm,
one. All right, Nightcrawler is higher than Enemy. All right, the next
mhm.
one is, which one do you think is higher, Donnie Darko or Enemy? Another Jake Gyllenhaal weird.
I love Donnie Darko.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say I think Donnie Darko's a pretty beloved movie at this point.
Okay.
I'd say Donnie Darko's higher too.
Okay. All right. And final round, third round, as we mentioned before, same actor, same director, Prisoners. Which one do you think is higher, Prisoners or Enemy?
I I guess I'm gonna put all of them over Enemy.
Okay.
Prisoners is huge. That one's a good movie. I think
Mhm.
critics would love that.
Okay. All right. So, starting first with Enemy 2013,
Mhm.
the overall critic rating on that one is 71%. And the overall audience score, even though this didn't tie into the game, was 64%. So, dip a little bit on the audience. That was a little surprising, but kind of understandable as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so first, Nightcrawler, you said you think Nightcrawler is higher. Nightcrawler came out 2014. Fucking Jake Gyllenhaal was on fire, apparently.
Mhm.
Nightcrawler has 95%. So you were
Yeah.
correct on that one. Yeah. That's another one I like to cover on this cast because it's weirdly dark as well.
Is that one not straight horror? That one
Well,
seems
yeah, you
pretty
could,
horror.
yeah, make that argument, yeah. And so, yeah, I tend to be a lot more lenient on the like, yeah, it's
Mm.
horror. What? That's why I do this podcast. Like, hey, it could be horror.
Yeah.
Um, oh, lost you again.
There we go.
And on Nightcrawler, the audience score on that one was 86, so higher on both counts for Nightcrawler. Going into Donnie Darko, you said you thought Donnie Darko was higher. So Donnie Darko is 87% for the critics and 80% for the audience. So again, both higher than Enemy. And finally, Prisoners, you said was higher, and you were correct again. Prisoners, 81% on the critic score, 87% on the audience score. So all three of these films are higher on the critic and audience scores.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Well, you celebrate, Seth. You won. You have a special chant. You want a hell yeet, a hell ski? You got something custom?
I don't have anything custom. Maybe I don't know.
A custom Seth chant. Which would you prefer, a hell yeet or a hell skeet? Then I'll give you whichever one you want.
Just because I've always wanted to say it. Hell yeet.
There you go. Hell yeet. Congratulations, Seth. Let's move into the vinyl segment and talk about. Let's go hunting, Seth. Let's catch our cooter of the week.
Straight chillin'. Cooter of the week.
All right, Seth. Let's see. We are going cooter hunting. Can you name the 5 points of cooterdom? Do you know them?
Yeah, let's see.
You got it. You got
it. Smug arrogance, manipulation, overall looking attire, sexual deviance, and overall patheticness.
Yes, nailed it.
Yeah.
Killed it. Yeah. So Cooter's the character type. And we are trying to find the top cooter. This one should be pretty easy. I guess, you know what? Let's talk about them as if they're separate people. So let's say that there's an Anthony, there's an Adam, there's a wife, there is a girlfriend. I can't remember their names. Who do you think would be the top cooter then based on that idea?
I think it'd still have to be Anthony.
Yeah, he's a real piece of shit.
He's a huge piece of shit.
All right, so which thing do you think he hits on most? Which point?
The sexual deviancy.
Sexual deviance, yeah. His whole little plan, dude, is we didn't really touch on that.
Oh yeah.
Because of the idea, like, oh, they're the same person. It's more like an idea for infidelity. But as the narrative presents it, these two different people, yeah. This one dude's like, I look just like you, so I'm gonna take your girlfriend out, not tell her that I'm a different person and have sex with her. Like, what the fuck? Yes, and which also leads into heavy manipulation because you're just raping someone by tricking them. Terrible person. Okay, so he hits hard on the manipulation, sexual deviancy. What about smug arrogance? Do you think he hits hard on that one?
I think he's pretty arrogant. I think so. I mean, look at his fucking leather jacket. He's so full of himself.
The blueberry moments too sticks out in my mind as this kind of like smug. His like wife is pregnant and he's like cheated on her and shit. Yeah, going to like, and he's like just giving her a hard time about fucking organic blueberries. God damn. Hey, I can't put the conventional blueberries in the fucking smoothie. It's like, damn, dude. So yeah, smug arrogance. Look at attire. You mentioned the leather jacket. Was there anything there? I guess there's nothing.
No, I mean, I guess he's technically better dressed than Adam is.
Yeah, I guess from just
He's just more stylish, I guess.
Yeah, and they even did an interesting thing. So kind of going off that, one thing that was interesting is they both wear just a white button-up shirt for a lot of the time. It's just that Anthony somehow looks like crisper and just kind of nicer somehow.
More like tapered.
Yeah, and like he doesn't wear a tie, whereas Adam does wear a tie to school. I thought that was an interesting choice to not even like make them distinctly different in their attire, just like small differences. That was pretty cool. And then overall patheticness. What do you think?
I don't know if I would give him patheticness as much as I would give Adam, but I think he's still pretty pathetic just in general with the lengths he goes to cheat on his wife. I'd say that's pretty fucking pathetic.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think the one that stands out more for Adam is the fact that you would let somebody go
Yeah.
have sex with a girlfriend, not try to protect her or yourself in that way, as the narrative presents it. So yeah, but he is, yeah, just the way like going to the strip club and lying to his wife, and yeah,
Mm.
he hits pretty hard, old Anthony. He's yeah, he's the real piece of shit.
He's topping the Cooter board.
He is. Yeah, he's high up there. All right, cool. Well, Seth, that was an awesome chat and an awesome recommendation. Thank you again for that. Before
Oh,
we wrap it up, please tell everyone all about your spooky doings, all about where they can find your podcast and everything like that.
okay. So I have a podcast called the Beandubbed Podcast. We just talk about movies. We don't actually specify what kind of movies we talk about, but we've covered a lot of directors' works. A lot of them, it's all of them. Like Jordan Peele, we've covered all of his movies. Alex Garland, we've covered all of his movies. Like you said, we've covered actors too, like Miles Teller. Granted, some not the best, but
But
those
still
are
good
good. Those are
discussions.
good
Yeah.
listens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and we're still fairly consistent. I mean, we're coming out about once a month now. So, and like I said, the visit's coming out. And I also have a YouTube channel. I haven't been super active on that either. Just the way it is.
Yeah.
I think the last time I uploaded was like 2 years ago, but I will get more consistent with that. We're in the middle of a move, so we're about to change our lives completely. So
Sure. Yeah, that's a lot of work.
yeah. So once we get more consistent with that, you know,
Yeah.
or you can go. I mean, I have a lot of content on YouTube. There's
That's
a
the thing
shit
I
ton
was
of
going to
videos,
mention.
so-
Yeah, I was going to say about the YouTube, and that's kind of the good thing with the podcast or the YouTube is that the content's there. So if you're just getting into
Yeah.
it, you have a ton of content on both ends of it. So because you guys been doing it for over a year, because you had your anniversary episode
Mhm.
and stuff. So tons of podcast stuff and a ton of stuff on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna in the video that hopefully people are watching right now. There is
Mhm.
gonna be like a link to your Instagram handle up there.
Awesome. Thank
So
you.
people can check you out from there. And then of course check out the YouTube and the podcast itself. So yeah. You guys are a lot of fun to listen to. Like I said, it sounds like friends, which is kind of the best thing I in my opinion to listen to. I love
Right.
people who have a clear connection. So I really enjoyed that about you guys. Cool. Well, thank you again for joining me. It's been an awesome discussion, and you have shown the light on a very interesting movie that I really enjoyed. So I appreciate it on both counts. Thank you, Seth.
Yeah, I appreciate coming on. Thank you so much, Soju.
Yeah, absolutely. This is episode 8. The next episode we will be talking about number 9. We're going to be talking about The Wizard of Oz. Hopefully.
Oh.
So so check that out. And until next time, don't forget to keep chilling.